moment for the end. Can TSM get back in time? I don't think they realize what's happening.
I cannot believe it.
This could be it.
One. Nexus falls. And Nori in the pit is healing up quite a bit. That's another kill. Phoenix 1 just gets her double kill. 3 people are dead. Bjergsen is zoned away. Hanser is dead. 4 members of TSM are gone.
After we won, we realized these guys are mortals, you know? We can actually beat them.
Biofrost is stalling out. The Nexus turret goes down. The Nexus is falling. Phoenix 1 has done it. They have defeated TSM. Welcome to Week 3, Day 3 of the North American League Championship Series. We're coming to you live for what is sure to be the most watched competitive event of the day. Am I right?
No, probably going to be the Puppy Bowl.
Oh, please. All right, well, here we have Dignitas arriving to the studio a little bit earlier today. Phoenix 1 themselves preparing for their battle against TSM. It's going to be a big one, the upset in 2016. There's Bjergsen and the rest of the crew making their way into the arena as well. Hello, everyone. I'm James Dash Patterson, back by popular demand, or really just to make Mark more comfortable.
I was freaking out yesterday. I was like, every time I looked to my right, I was like, right, Dash, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, I was at home watching. You guys did fabulously. I got to thank all the guys for stepping up in my stead as I'm gone. But joined on the desk today by Mark Zimmerman and Sam Kobe Hartman Kensler. Kobe, how you doing today?
A-team, let's go.
Boom. A-team. A-team. I like it. All right, well, let's get into the business. Fun fact. Before we get into today's business, actually, yesterday's finale between Echo Fox and Liquid marked the 1,000th game of regular season NALCS. So thanks to the audience at home for being a part of the journey. And here's to many, 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 many more games. One can only hope. We've got some of those for you today. And as we get into it all, let's review how the teams are ranked. At 5-0, Cloud9 continues to hold on to first place. Then in second, we have Phoenix 1, FlyQuest, and TSM. Behind the middle of the pack teams are Dignitas, CLG, tied in 8th, with Envy ending their week in 10th. Now, some of those ties are sure to snap with our matches scheduled today. First off, on NALCS 1, we'll see who drops out of second as Phoenix 1 goes against TSM. Then FlyQuest hopes to keep up with the winner of that match by defeating Immortals. Over on NALCS 2, Team Dignitas and CLG hope to leave the other behind at the bottom of the standings, after which Cloud9 takes on Echo Fox. Now, during those games, make sure you tweet at LOL Esports any questions from the weekend, and myself, Kobe, or Zyrene might be able to answer them later on NALCS tonight. But gentlemen, going into this weekend, we expected to see some changes with the patch coming through. Teams also managed to sneak in a few surprises as well.
Right. I mean, coming into the week was all about lethality and the popular picks that we were going to see with it. But there's also been a couple surprise picks that work out really well with it, most coming from FlyQuest with the Zed, the Misfortune, and then we've also seen something like the Graves being able to get a burst to your build, and it's going to be something to keep an eye on because the lethality buffs do affect more than just what we were expecting with the Varus and the Jhin and stuff like that. So there's a lot more assassins that are AD picks. Also, Jace is another one. We can see a lot more stuff keep popping up.
Yeah, and with the importance of lethality now, also rising in importance is a flat armor, right, and tanks. So we'll see where that does come from because a lot of teams have been trending towards these poke comps, and that gave rise to some new junglers, right? I really like Ivern, finally made its way over. Europe's been the sole region pretty much using that, but nowadays we got it as well. Really does complement poke comps very well because of the extra snare that you can send out to make it much easier to land that poke, as well as Nidalee has also made a good showing. Her heal buff in the recent patch helped out a lot. Plus, as usual, she can throw the spears. Here's some looks at how you can also use Ivern, though. The extra utility here, basically another support and half tank. You get Daisy, almost another free champion for team fights for your poke comp that doesn't want anyone to soak up the hits. Got Daisy out there. It doesn't matter that it's AI and not an actual another player because you're just taking a bunch of beatings.
You just need to throw something out there to absorb skill shots and stuff like that. And right now, the jungle pool doesn't have many tanks. You basically have Rek'Sai as like the primary one, and Ivern being able to be another option that can bring a lot of utility and a little bit of beef is really nice.
It was very interesting to see Nidalee pop up, though, by a couple different players, including Moon himself yesterday, just as the old school kind of poke jungler.
Yeah. Everyone got a little scared as soon as we see Nidalee come back to competitive. Like, please, not again.
I don't ever want that champion back in my solo queue games. It's annoying as heck, but it is a nice counter to Ivern as the primary kind of poke jungler that has shown up. Jat, the resident Ivern expert as well, pointing out some mechanics like the ganks there, showing up with your shield first.
The mechanics
then,
of walking
then
at him?
the Q. You walk at him first, then you throw your Q. Too many players try and do it in the opposite direction. Now, while Cloud9 still hold the first place spot, we've got a battle for second with 3 different teams coming up. Obviously, Phoenix won TSM, first match of the day. They're 2 of our 3 teams.
And I think it is a really interesting matchup because when you look just at the performance of their players, Bjerg and Ryu are actually really close just in terms of stats.
Oh, yeah.
And even game impact. Like, Ryu has had some monster team fights and plays. And then the rest of the team kind of gets a little imbalanced where you can say TSM has an advantage on the top side with Haunter, and in the bot lane, P1 probably has it with Arrow.
Yeah, Arrow has been super impressive to me. In a world where AD carries right now haven't really been shining through a lot, and accuracy has been basically the best measure, for success for AD carries, right? And he's actually been one of the most. Plus, dealing out having a large uptime basically on AD carries is more difficult now that, you're bringing the utility. But he's also able to thread in so many auto attacks between all the skill shots that he's landing.
Now, following yesterday's win, though, for TSM, the two games that they won in pretty dominant fashion. How would Phoenix 1 be feeling coming into that? A TSM that's on the rise and improving week over week.
Well, I mean, P1's in the same boat, so both these guys have been winning a ton. P1, I think, was like 6-0 in their last games or something like that.
Right, 3 2-0s in a row.
Yeah, so they have they're also on this massive upward trajectory as well, and one of them is going to unfortunately have to drop off here.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the match that almost all people, plus all the teams, are really looking forward to see because it does kind of shake out the top of the standings.
Now, of course, we talked about how there are 3 teams in this discussion, FlyQuest being the 3rd. They'll, of course, be playing for a victory to tie up whoever wins in this matchup. How are we feeling about this roster and that kind of race for second place?
I'm definitely a big fan of the FlyQuest strategy right now, and people are kind of just laughing about it right now, and they're like, it's so funny to see High and Lemon, winning again. They're back in the LCS. That's comical. Yet, it's so much about their flexibility in pick ban and the fact that they have one of the best, if not the best all-time in-game leader that North America has ever provided to the scene in High. And you can see it in their playstyle, right? They're so decisive with all these roams that they're going for. They head into the game with a well-planned-out strategy, due to Lemon as well as the coaching staff, and then they execute it really well because of High's, in-game direction.
And I think it's interesting to contrast that from the way that P1 and TSM kind of play, where they are struggling a little bit more in the mid-late game, where FlyQuest is really strong there, and they have more basic drafts, whereas FlyQuest is doing all this crazy stuff on red side, leaving OPs up and drafting not based off priority. So the way the teams all at the top play is actually very different.
Some important matchups here to close out week 3. The teams are about ready to go, so it's time to send it over to the casters to get us in the game.
Thanks, Dash. Greetings, League fans. I'm Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and lending his analytical expertise for this series is Joshua Jat Leesman. What's going on, man?
It's good to be here, and I am happy to all the people that are specifically here and chose us and CLG and Dig over TSM and Phoenix 1 that's on the other stream. You made the right choice.
Absolutely. Our first match today does feature 2 teams tied in the standings, with Team Dignitas facing off against Counterlogic Gaming, as he just said, and Team Dignitas are on the back foot after being dismantled by FlyQuest yesterday.
Yeah, and you can almost couch their performance a little bit for Dignitas since they've played TSM, Phoenix 1, FlyQuest, and Cloud9 already. But ultimately, with those showing up as losses, the team that was Apex before they changed to Team Dignitas here is still looking like Apex, who wasn't all that hot last split. At someday, though, remains a bright spot for this team. But we are wrapping up week 3 now, and Team Dignitas are in danger of that 1-5 start to the split, which would be bad.
And it's a similar story for their opponents in CLG, who are also sitting on a 1-4 record themselves. They're in danger, too.
Yeah, and let you look at CLG, and they're as cool as cucumbers. They have that veteran attitude, and they're confident they can turn it on in time to make playoffs. But they kind of need to start now. And they looked good in Game 1 against TSM yesterday, but they fell apart for the rest of the series. And it's tough, right? Because most teams look at an opponent with a 1-4 record and assume it'll be an easy win. But neither of those teams have the luxury of taking this match for granted because there's great players on both sides.
Hard to look down at a 1-4 record when you're also sitting on a 1-4 record. It can be a tough life. But let's go ahead and take a look at those starting lineups. On the blue side, it's Team Dignitas. Someday in the top lane, Chaser in the jungle, Keen at mid, Lod Bottom, Special supporting him, and Coach Jung-Soo Kim.
Yep, and on the red side, as we just mentioned, is Counter Logic Gaming. You know these names. Darshan in the top lane, Xmithy in the jungle. Huhi's had a pretty good split in the mid lane, despite the record. Stixay in bot with Aframu, and Zix is the coach.
Now, we talked about the 1-4 record for both of these teams, talked about the fact that they both need a bit of a win, but the consequence that we may not have directly spelled out for losing this series is you leave week number 3 tied for last with Envy.
Yeah, and that is really grim, actually. There are no winless teams left in the LCS. Both of these teams have strong playoff aspirations. If you're Team Dignitas and you sign Someday and Chaser from the LCK, you expect to be very good. And then I feel like CLG is still kind of riding off that MSI success when they were second place at MSI and then still made it to Worlds. But it's just not there yet, and they need to find a way to make it work.
Let's see if they can do it or do anything special here in the picking and banning phase as we are into Champion Select for game number 1. They're going to be banning Aurelion Sol and Jace out on the side of Dignitas, really showing respect towards Huhi's mastery of Aurelion Sol. As Camille shows up, ban number 1 on the red side. Nothing really too special there.
Yeah, just target bans from Team Dignitas on the blue side. They have the luxury of doing this in most situations. Now you see CLG with the Rengar and the Camille ban. You can almost certainly expect a LeBlanc ban last. The only situation you wouldn't see that is if Keen really doesn't want to play it, but even then, I feel like if they would have just saved that, CLG would have banned it anyway, but they're taking the risk because they really don't want to be forced for Keen to have it, and it speaks to a hole in Keen's champion pool.
It gives a little bit of breathing room towards CLG to actually make a real ban of their own instead of just having to ban away the last member of the Unholy Trinity.
Exactly.
We always see Red Team having to respond to, and they're going to decide to take Ryze off the table, still targeting the mid lane, still targeting a power pick, but not just the power pick.
Exactly, and Ryze is another one of those big picks. Kha'Zix is probably one of the most first-picked champions in the game, definitely the most first-picked jungler since Rengar almost never gets through. They're choosing between him and Varus since the lethality changes, I feel like, have made Varus the #1 bot laner, but Kha'Zix would be this more logical choice.
And a point worth making is that both of these junglers have actually played Kha'Zix the most, tied with a couple of other champions, actually. But Kha'Zix is a most played champion for both of these two. They've each got 4 games on him. And now Chaser's going to be having a 5th here in match number 1 against Counter Logic Gaming. CLG, though, they're taking a chance to pick up a couple of power picks of their own with Maokai and Varus locked in first rotation.
Yeah, and I actually think this is a little bit dangerous to pick the Maokai so early with Fiora still on the table, only because Someday is on the other side, and he has pretty much been the sole carry for Team Dignitas. He's 2-0 so far on Fiora. It is one of the picks you put into the Maokai, and we'll see if they pick it here before CLG could potentially ban it out on the second side.
Dignitas will go ahead and respond, picking up the Jhin in the bottom lane, the other one of those 80 carries that benefits from the lethality changes, so they're going to lock him in against the Varus. And just as you predicted, Fiora for Someday, that top lane carry.
Yeah, so Darshan definitely hoping to make sure this game accelerates into a teamfight phase, because if Someday's Fiora gets to the super late game and the game stays close, that matchup becomes very favored for the Fiora. Until then, the Maokai tank will have much more teamfight presence, so that's what CLG is going to be trying to do, is accelerate the game to that point.
Graves actually going to be pick number 3 for CLG. They're going to match roll for roll, 80 carry top and jungle on both sides, and it's what they were kind of talking about on the desk leading into this. Lethality buffs mean new champions becoming available, becoming a possibility, and Graves is one that kind of surprised us.
Yeah, and it's specifically just the Edge of Night, and if you're really far ahead, you end up throwing the Duskblade on top of the Warrior and Ghostblade, and you have so much base damage and lethality to cut through the enemy armor that a previously strong Graves is now just deleting people off the map if he gets to that point, but he also does it at the cost of being quite squishy.
Ban phase number 2 coming up now after those first 6 picks means Malzahar and Syndra are going to be taken off the table. And since the roles were matched in the first part of the picking phase, that means banning phase will likely look somewhat similar between the two teams as they want to be taking those mid laners and supports off the table.
Yeah, and you can see CLG, as was the case yesterday against TSM, is doing a pretty concentrated effort to ban out the Zyre and the Malzahar in phase 2 to push it to the different support pool that Aframu's had a little bit more credit on. Interesting as well that Team Dignitas has banned the Karma, since that's Xpecial's most played support by a long shot. Mainly they didn't want to give it to CLG because with the double support ban, CLG was kind of prepping a Karma pick, so Team Dignitas wasn't going to get that anyway.
Aframu also has a couple of games under his belt on Karma already, but he's going to be blocking in the Thresh. a
Yep.
playmaking support here for Afromu in
That's
game number
the thing.
one.
We keep hitting on it. Afromu is a playmaker, and CLG is at their best when he is able to initiate and actually be a part of making the plays instead of being on a disengaged champion like the Zyra or the Misfortune. So I like the choice from them, especially with all the support bans. And they also are allowing Huhi a counterpick to try and take advantage of what he claims is a very large champion pool.
Well, that champion pool for Keen is going to include Corki this game. We've been seeing a lot of this guy in the mid lane, Jat, and for good reason. He is so incredibly strong right now.
Exactly, and we're in a little bit of a poke meta here because of the long-range marksman in the bot lane, and then also Corki complements that so well. This very high uptime, long-range poke that really forces teams to try and engage on you. So very common Corki to be picked in the mid lane with something like a Jhin. And then they also now have picked the Tahm Kench to try and match up against a Thresh hook that lands. Just eat the guy before they can take it in.
Easy way to get him out of trouble. If you've got to do it, we'll have to see how well that works out for Dignitas, as that final pick will be coming through in just a couple of moments for CLG, and it's Orianna, currently the most played champion for Huhi, going to put another game on it so far this split, matching up against that Corki.
Yeah, unfortunately, most played in a 1-4 split doesn't necessarily correlate to success all the time. So
Right.
1-3 on it so far. It's been okay, and this does speak very well to CLG having a very strong team fighting composition. They have large amounts of damage, they have differentiation in their damage type, and they have Orianna who can also help shield Darshan when he goes in to be the big tank. So very much a team fight focus here from CLG, as they're going to want to try and get the lead and then really just stuff it home into Team Dignitas so Someday can't become the split pushing force.
And there's so many eyes on Someday this game as the one who's been that reliable carry for Team Dignitas in the past, in the games where they have looked good. And you also got to remember kind of what we were talking about yesterday when Dignitas went up against FlyQuest. The inconsistency of Chaser and Keen puts even more pressure on Someday to make those plays and be that carry.
Yeah, it really does. But I do still like what Team Dignitas has done with this draft, putting Someday in a position where he can carry the game. There have been other drafts where Team Dignitas seems to get the super high champions in every role, and then Someday's on Poppy, and even if he has a good game, he's not necessarily able to win it. If he's on Fiora and Chaser on an S-tier jungler like Kha'Zix can also have a good game, you could see Team Dignitas just winning off that.
Absolutely could. We'll have to see if they can make that happen against CLG, or if CLG is going to show them exactly how things are done. Two teams that nobody was expecting to be this low in the standings now got to go head-to-head. One trying to claw their way back. One still going to be stuck at the bottom. Who's it going to be? We're on to Summoner's Rift in game number 1 to find out.
Yeah, sad truth of this game is the loser goes to 1-5, and as we mentioned earlier, would be tied for last place 1/3 of the way through the split. That is not something either of these teams expect, and it's something they desperately want to avoid.
That's some rough business. A fate nobody wants to be sharing with the current state of Team Envy is Dignitas and CLG. Nothing really too crazy going to be happening here at the level 1 as Smithy and Huhi stepping up just a little bit into enemy territory. You're going to find Keen waiting on him as Chaser and Someday deciding to sort of respond in kind. Darshan will be there waiting for him. Chaser forced to flash over the wall.
If
Puts
Afromu
himself
gets
far
into hook range
forward.
and lands it,
Oh, death sentence. Just a little bit wide right.
yeah, so that was a really risky invade by Chaser, and he's a little bit fortunate to only get out of there with his flash burn and not also giving up first blood. What does happen, though, is since CLG showed so many people towards Chaser, Team Dignitas was able to ward the blue.
Keystone Mastery's popping up there on your screen. Nothing really too crazy. Maokai still going to be going with Courage of the Colossus post-nerf. We've been seeing a couple of those top laners switch over to the Grasp instead, but he's going to be remaining with that extra shielding potential in the team fights. And a little bit surprised at this Tahm Kench run. I don't think we've seen Bonds of Stone in a long time.
Yeah, we definitely haven't. With the nerfs to Courage, Tahm Kench not having the greatest ways of proccing it, and if he doesn't think he's going to be getting into slap range for his Grasp, I can see it as an argument. I actually think just the raw gold value of that mastery is okay, but yeah, it's definitely a rare choice.
Chaser starting off on the bottom part of his jungle. Smithy going to be starting off on the opposite side of the map, top side for himself. Red buff beginning for both of these two as Lodnik Special walk in, immediately going to find themselves hooked. A little bit of extra damage coming out there from Stixay to start the lane off.
Yeah, trying to get the most out of that level 1 death sentence, making sure they can get Early shove on the lane. The slight range advantage of the Thresh onto the Tahm Kench can allow CLG to shove this out a little bit, but a little more kill threat than we are used to in our bot lanes early on in the split. And we may end up seeing some fireworks down there just because both of them have gone with that longsword start to try and rush their first lethality item, which lowers their max health pool and makes them more vulnerable to getting killed.
Aframu always trying to be that playmaker down here, constantly stepping up, looking to grab those death sentences. That last one not hitting onto Lod. However, the piercing arrow follow-up will find its mark. As Chaser moves his way up into this top part of the map, seeing if he can help Someday out. Rapose going to be blocking that Maokai Q. As Darshan is forced to flash away, Chaser goes ahead and blows that summoner spell.
And this could be pretty troubling too, because it looks like Darshan actually has the wave pushing away from him, and he's flashless without wards or jungle assistance close by. So either he needs to be very risky here because a Kha'Zix's return gank could happen, or he would need to teleport back into the lane with wards. Chaser's coming right back up. He should almost be expecting Xmithy to counter gank though, because Xmithy needs to be up here just to protect Darshan.
Nature of Graves very likely to want to counter gank as well. Goes ahead, fires that into the line, into the wall, but Chaser just hops himself out of there. No real danger for him just yet. Darshan and Someday still just going to be 1v1ing as the junglers both head into Chaser's top part of the jungle.
Xmithy needs to stay up here until Darshan can push that wave into Fiora. Otherwise, he would get denied off the wave because he is flashless. So good on Xmithy for getting that ward at the Gromp and clearing the plant to get more vision onto Chaser. Might allow Darshan the time to get in. And then he also nearly kills Keen.
Yeah, that nice return on the end of the line makes it so he's able to proc that Thunderlords, get some very juicy burst down onto Keen, force him out of lane here nice and early. Chaser again going to be hanging around the top side, walks over 2 different wards without realizing what he's doing. Just going to get himself back now, not really seeing an opportunity to do much to Darshan. Darshan's just going to be cheeky with those saplings, make his life a little bit more difficult to get out of there in time. But the fan vote that we actually saw pop up on the screen a couple of moments ago, 48% think Dignitas is winning, 52% give it to CLG. A very split player base over the outcome of this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games where it's really difficult to decide the outcome because both of these teams have shown flashes of being strong, but ultimately haven't been able to pull it through. So I can see where the split is. Xmithy going bot.
Xmithy active again. Looking to make the gank this time into the bottom lane of Dignitas. Pulled to safety by that lantern from Aframu. Not really finding exactly what he was looking for there. You saw Afro go for the hook onto the Tahm Kench, but again, couldn't find it.
Yeah, did burn the flash, which is a successful gank since it was part of Smithy's natural jungle pathing as he goes back. Hasn't really been denied too much, but with that gank Chaser trying to harass, CLG have been tracking him very precisely here, and he smites early. Who he gets it.
Who easily securing that big raptor. Chaser's got to be timing those smites a little bit better if you're going to go counter jungling. It's one of the most important aspects of it. Otherwise, you're going to be losing out on that big monster in the camp, and that's where most of the experience in gold is.
Yeah, the tricky thing with Chaser there is he was so low that if he didn't smite, he would have feared giving up first blood to Hui, so I can see why he smote early, just not having the best of times on that Kha'Zix early.
An unfortunate situation. Someday having himself a pretty fun time here in the top part of the map. 38 CS to 25 very early on in this lane, so off to the kind of start that you would hope for your Fiora if you're expecting him to carry this game.
Yeah, and Chaser has put a lot of time into the top lane to burn that flash, and Xmithy is also going to try and get something back here. Knows he's walking through a control ward, so they have to go now.
Xmithy is just ganking all over the place this game. Someday going to be slowed down. Darshan still looking to make the moves if he can. Chaser's on the way. Someday keeping himself alive very, very well. Someday going right back into the fight. Darshan has no flash. Remember that. Chaser finds the rockets. The courage of the Colossus keeps Darshan alive.
Someday is being a bit of an issue already. That gank lasted a while Chaser slowly walked up there. And again, Xmithy has to kind of help Darshan here. Darshan's down teleport, doesn't want to give up this huge wave, so Xmithy is kind of here holding the wave with him so he's able to farm, and that's delaying his flexibility in the jungle.
Someday on this Fiora is so fun to watch because he is so comfortable on the champion. Even with 2 enemy players hanging around, he just lunges back and forth, weaving himself through the minions, grabbing the CS, no fear at all in this guy.
Yeah, and here we go. CLG already trying to mess with Someday, sending the delayed lane swap up. This is earlier than we've seen them do it against TSM, and they're going back in onto Someday. They don't even need to kill him, but they want to kill his turret.
The riposte is used to keep Someday alive after that jump from the Maokai trying to take him down. Someday still looking to farm.
Yeah, this could be big, though. Tahm Kench is coming up, as is Laud. They're definitely not going to let him have the turret. And Cork ends up falling back, so no fight as of yet.
CLG really recognizing the Dignitas game plan for victory, deciding they want to jump on Someday nice and early, but the pressure just does not pay off for them quite yet. Maokai getting himself back, going to be going towards that bottom lane. Someday will do the same, and we've got ourselves a reversal.
Yeah, and they're just going to end up swapping right back. But the question is, do they swap yet again? Because CLG actually doesn't like this Darshan versus Someday matchup, especially after a few ganks have gone awry. So Team Dignitas was very quick to match the first roam, but now as Darshan is recalled, and he realized that Team Dignitas was so quick to match the roam, is already running top lane. So unless Team Dignitas swaps back, like, CLG's actually going to be able to get this matchup, which would be 2v1 onto Someday and leaving Darshan in the 1v2, which is what they prefer. Because,
Absolutely.
With 2 top laners starved, that still delays the amount of time until the Fiora can become really big.
Maokai works a lot better on low economy than Fiora does. Maokai's always going to have that lockdown potential. He's still going to be tanky. There's just so much built into his kit that even without gold, you can be useful in these fights. Fiora, as a carry by nature, going to be needing a little bit more gold under her belt in order to be effective as the game goes on. Gold's still dead even between these two teams, though. Any advantages being built by one side are being answered elsewhere by the other side as Stixxay and Afromu pushing up onto Someday here in this bottom lane. Smithy going to be rotating down towards these guys yet again. Always keeping that pressure on.
Yeah, Keen has picked up a package so he can threaten the ganks in the side lanes. And I do like the way Smithy is using Graves. He's trying to pull Kha'Zix out of the jungle and just force him into spots. That's one thing that Graves is so good at in the jungle, is just pushing lanes, actually, as soon as he comes out of the jungle, because he does a bunch of damage to turrets and also has incredibly good wave clear. So we may end up seeing yet another swap right here.
Someday getting himself back, Lodnik special showing up, but at the same time, the back comes out from Darshan. CLG is continuing to juggle these lanes around Dignitas.
Yeah, and this is pretty funny to watch, actually.
It honestly is. It's
As
very
they're-
entertaining to watch them go match for match on these.
They're constantly running away from each other, and it's all about predicting the play once to be able to get a turret, because right now, they actually have 4 people bottom lane, so all of this dancing back and forth by CLG could end up costing them first turret, because there's no way Darshan holds this.
Darshan alone versus 4, not a matchup the tree's going to be doing too well in. Keen, Chaser, Special, Lod, everybody just ganging up on this one. Darshan tosses in a sapling, but there's nothing else he can find. And it's going to be turret first blood going over to Dignitas just a little bit before 10 minutes.
Yep, they eventually end up taking turret first blood, and CLG is keeping the Maokai and the Fiora a little bit denied on gold, because that's the end result of what's happening. CLG is going to end up killing this turret. They just don't get the bonus. So that's the cost they pay, as well as this Ocean Drake. I think that's actually too high of a cost, but that's good for Team Dignitas for matching it and countering properly.
Yep, Dignitas feeling pretty good about the situation they've found themselves in. That first Drake taken down at 10 minutes. Extra regeneration early on. Keen looking to make the moves onto Huhi. Curtain Call opens up. Huhi's getting out, but he's out behind enemy lines. Someday going to be chasing him down. Afromu there with the lantern, and saving Private Huhi is mission success.
Could still see a 5v5. Shockwave burned on blue.
That was an interesting turn of events. The CLG's looking to go right back in. They've got the hook onto Special. First blood for Huhi. Lod's going to be number 2.
And CLG get a very early weird team fight around the blue buff, but Darshan did see the opportunity to go in for the bot lane of Team Dignitas as they were a little bit scattered. He thought maybe it would be safe to enter the jungle, as Huhi tried to blue secure with a shockwave, but ultimately, Smithy did get the blue with the smite, and they get the first 2 kills, plus more turret pressure.
A tier 2 turret going down 1 minute after turret first blood did. CLG sees what Dignitas did early on. They were like, damn, they got the better of us. Let's just turn it right back around.
Yeah, it was really chaotic in there, and even though CLG is the team fighting team, they're the ones that are playing the map as much as possible and really pushing Team Dignitas on their cohesion, and that's the time where CLG comes out a little bit on top.
Huhi grabbing a kill and an assist in that despite blowing the shockwave, and here's how that whole fight goes down.
Yeah, so Chaser's really low, and that shockwave, even though it was actually targeted at Chaser, Chaser ended up flashing over the wall as well as dodging the shockwave, so CLG's still making the call to go with Chaser being so low, and then everyone on Team Dignitas was stuck behind the Raptor camp, whereas the bot lane just kind of found themselves off on their own, so CLG well able to just stay together, whereas Team Dignitas got split apart.
And despite the fact that they lost the turret First Blood Gold we were talking about earlier, the fact that they've got a global turret advantage as well as a 2-0 kill lead means CLG is now up 2,000 gold early on in this game.
Yeah, definitely makes up for it. And then even if you just look at the Maokai versus Fiora, their gold is even with Darshan being able to pick up those kills in the team fights. But Team Dignitas trying to get something back. Look at that teleport positioning by Someday.
Smithy pulled to safety by Afromoose.
Here he
Someday
is.
coming around from behind, though. Can they make the moves here? Stixay exhausted, trying to get himself away. Chain of Corruption going to be finding its way onto Someday. CLG in full retreat. Someday still looking to chase him down. Tom Kench into the back lines. Xpecial is there, and Stixay is done. Dignitas find their mark.
Whew, and they burned a lot to get there, but credit to Someday for being able to finish off that kill. He couldn't quite riposte the ultimate from Stixay, and it made you think they wouldn't be able to close it out, but Xpecial came in with the Abyssal Voyage right at the end to get the slow and ultimately the Someday kill. But that's a lot of free time and a lot of map pressure elsewhere. Mid lane's pushing up, so's top.
Huhi trying to shove this in as quickly as he can, while Darshan is just delivering a big old wave of minions into that inhibitor turret. Someday with that TP way behind them was ready to make this play.
Yeah, and right before the ward died, that ward died already on the replay. So Stixay flashing back, sees Someday right there. Stixay ulting while Someday was dashing forward is just the perfect timing, but at that point, Xpecial comes in, Someday just dashes forward once again with the flash, and they're able to close the kill.
And despite the fact that you've got so many of these high damage carry potential champions on the side of Dignitas with Fiora, Kha'Zix, Corki, and Jhin, they've got to be happy about getting that on Fiora of all people. Just boosting that carry potential early, making it so he's able to get where he needs to be and be that massive split push threat.
Yeah, because you look at the rest of the Team Dignitas team, and it's very poke heavy. Jhin and Corki are about sieging, and with the Tom Kench to aid them, disengaging. Not to mention, I'm expecting Chaser to evolve W second instead of Leap to get the slow on his Void Spikes as well as throwing out more Void Spikes, and that just kind of adds to the poke they're going to be able to throw out. But that's all well and good. You really need the split pusher to work if you're going to have the rest of your squad doing the poke.
Chaser caught out, and Xpecial is right there with the save, keeping him nice and safe. Exactly what you mentioned when we saw that Tom Kench locked in Champion Select. Somebody gets hooked, then they get eaten, the play is done.
Yeah, and even an ultimate burn by Varus to stuff that play, so as long as Xpecial is near Laud, and as long as the two of them aren't next to 5 people on CLG and then they don't just kill Xpecial after the feast, then they'll be all right.
It did cost Xpecial his flash there to get in range of Chaser in time to keep him safe, but that's definitely a trade that Dignitas is okay with making. Still down 1,500 gold. Ocean Drake going to be alive here in about 1 minute. As you can see, CLG hanging around the area, sort of clearing out some of these wards, prepping for that event, making sure they're going to be ready when it does happen.
Yeah, and especially when you're in these games where there's so much poke flying around, the Ocean Drake really climbs in priority as far as who wants to get it. Team Dignitas already getting the first one, because mana is a constraint in poke as well, whether or not you can continue to poke, so it's good for both sides to have it. More important to deny the team that's absorbing the poke, though. So CLG really wants that Ocean Drake so that they can't get poked out, and they should be teleporting and prepping for this Drake.
And when this Drake fight does happen, we're starting to see first items really come online here. Yumu's Ghost Blades completed for both these lethality-based AD carries. Morello Namacon done for the Orianna, Sunfire Cape on the Maokai. So we're starting to see those early spikes happen for these guys in their builds.
Yeah, and having the Serrated Dirk on top of the Ghost Blade, plus still having a tier, just puts Stixay way ahead of Laud in damage. But what's interesting here is Team Dignitas is actually prepping the top wave to just increase Someday's advantage, and they don't necessarily care about giving up position on the Ocean Drake. Someday doesn't even have teleport, so they're going for this kill on Darshan.
Darshan alone. Xpecial coming in to make it a 3v1. Someday going to be soaking that turret for a long, long time. Xpecial ends up eating Chaser up, trying to take him away. Darshan exhausted and beaten down. Dignitas grabbing that kill for themselves. Going to be getting turret number 2 as well, but CLG found number 3.
Yeah, and I really question Darshan jumping in so freely right there against the Fiora and the Kha'Zix, because yes, Xpecial did have to join with the Abyssal Voyage, but now he can't even wave clear for the second turret. So COD traded with time in the mid lane turret, which he could have done regardless of Darshan dying, and it is an Ocean Drake sacrifice, but he really just did not have to die there.
CLG trying to come up here and stop them on Dignitas, see if they can get
here we go.
pick here. Xpecial's going to be bursted down. No thick skin even. Bursted before he could do it as the 4th turret falls on the side of Team Dignitas. CLG going to be grabbing more of those objective leads. Keen's clearing out some waves down here, but he's got Xmithy and Stixay waiting for him. Keen's a little bit too far forward.
Yeah. There's some pings right on top of him. Keen has no vision on the map, and there's the cavalry.
Here comes the pincer attack. What can they do? Keen looking to get himself out. 2 different TPs going to be channeled. Remember, the Dignitas TP is going to be there slightly beforehand, but it's actually canceled. Keen now alone. No way to get out of that one, and Stixay is going to grab it with Piercing Arrow.
Yeah, Someday decided to cancel. Darshan decided to complete. Still 2 teleports burned. Somedays will come back a little faster because he canceled his. He was not going to be able to save Keen, who was up at that point.
Not as Fiora.
Was hoping to scare him off. Unsuccessful.
Sadly for them, Darshan also had his TP, decided to call the bluff, and considering there were 4 members of CLG down there, Someday just decided he didn't want to be an extra tombstone in the bottom lane of Summoner's Rift. 4-2 now still for CLG. Looking pretty good here in game number 1. Also had some mistakes though, so looking to see kind of who does this more cleanly going into the mid game. Who's actually got a coherent game plan and can translate that into success.
Exactly, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's really what the game is about. Can they keep Someday down?
And if they're going to do it, this is the way to get it done. Someday forced to flash over the wall. Stixay going right after him. Xmithy is there too. Adios, Someday. That's the pick they need.
Yeah, because that's really all Team Dignitas has. They've been funneling everything towards him, even giving up Ocean Drake for it. So CLG now taking Someday down. Do not have to worry about the split push threat and should be very aggressive about trying to take this turret with the next minion wave.
Stixay going to continue firing those arrows off as well. A lot of power in the poke as he's whittling down health bars. Even if Special gets some of that HP back, if there's no minions in front of those piercing arrows, they still have quite a sting to them.
Oh yeah, and they help wave clear incredibly fast as well. Pretty difficult to push up against the Corki though. He can just, as you can see, a big one from Corki and a W from the Jhin clears out the back wave, stuffing the push and allowing Someday to respawn.
Poke spam versus poke spam. The minions just get pretty much deleted and nobody gets to make any real headway as CLG now with a minion wave middle. Going to be rotating over towards this one, but Corki's phosphorus bombs more than effective at clearing some of those out. Stixay eating the damage from the big one, going to be taken down to about half. Doesn't really want anything to do with this fight any longer with that minion wave gone. CLG just keeps dancing back and forth between top and mid, trying to out-rotate their opponents little by little.
Yeah, and they also know they have a big wave brewing into the top side so that someone's going to go for that, and as soon as Someday does, CLG can fully commit down to taking this next turret.
Flash forced out from Keen as he tries to escape CLG, but Curtain Call gets opened up, looking for anybody he can find. 3rd shot hits Stixay. 4th one's going to be finding Xmithy. Big one. Lod grabbing the kill onto Stixay. Chaser almost going to be brought down by Darshan, who's now Deadly Flourish, kept alive by Huhi. Shockwave not finding anyone thanks to Xspecial's flash. CLG, low health bars. Lod looking to make that 4th shot count. Can he do it? Dancing Grenade finds the kill, but he pays for it with his own life. Xspecial now going to be tanking back and forth. Darshan too tanky. Chaser's able to find the damage. Someday looking to get in the mix as Huhi still looking to take Chaser down. He gets him, but Someday cleans it up. 3 for 4.
And this is going to be another one, and they get to hand it to Someday.
Oh, Afro double killed. Someday now 4, 1, and 0 on this Fiora.
So this was a mess as far as fights go, but I understand the plays here. CLG really want to finish this turret, but end up taking a lot of poke. They cannot disrespect this. It's the Kazakh's poke as well as the Corki poke, and he gets a big one onto 4 people as Lod's Curtain Call ends up finishing him out. But then Team Dignitas is thinking, oh man, we might win this fight, not realizing Fiora is still not here. So it is a 3v4, even if the health is low. So when Lod flashes in, not getting that slat hit and going back in for another dancing grenades, kind of gets him one shot, and then they don't have any sustained damage until Sumner's like, wait a minute, I can get 2 kills. That's more valuable than finishing off this outer turret. As soon as he teleports in, Someday was going to clean up these 2 kills, so it was good for Huhi to be able to finish off Chaser. Unfortunately for CLG, it means Someday now has 4 kills on the game.
That was a smooth lunge into a post combination from Someday as well. Just not even allowing Afro to waste any extra time as he cleans these guys up, gets himself right back to where he wants to be, farming up 191 CS so far. Black Cleaver and Ravenous Hydra completed. Means he's a very scary prospect to have to deal with in any kind of a 1v1 situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And CLG is going to continue to try and group up now and force more team fights, maybe even hope the Team Dignitas gets aggressive, because in the chaos of that fight, look at all the flashes and the summoner spells that were actually burned. And no flashes left on the main, on anyone on Team Dignitas. So if CLG can get Maokai to flash initiate and kill a priority target first, they could see some huge gains.
And you saw it at the bottom of your screen there just a moment ago, but Stixay 166 damage in the last team fight. Not what you want to be finding for your AD carry. Darshan now in danger of being caught out. Shockwave going to be used, doesn't find anyone. Curtain call opened up. Darshan, normally the guy who'd be soaking him, doesn't want to be soaking much longer. Flashing in front of Stixay so that that fourth bullet will not seal his fate. CLG gets out.
Yeah, Someday just baiting who he Shockwave and allowing Team Dignitas to get aggressive right there. So not even just split pushing, but also helping him out in the 5v5 windows. Pretty incredible. Darshan having to flash away defensively. Let's see if COD can rush down this Mountain Drake.
Drakes are 1 ocean to 1 ocean so far, so this will be a nice little advantage for CLG if they can find it. Now that we're 23 minutes into game 2, remember that Baron could always be an option off the back of a big team fight, so Mountain Drake will help make that a reality for CLG even faster if it does become an opportunity.
Yeah, the Mountain Drake just accelerates the pace at which these teams have to make decisions, because so much of the push-pull in these split-push games with the Fed Fiora is how quickly can Fiora kill a turret or an inhibitor while your main squad is either killing turrets on the other side or rushing for objectives. So again, very critical in this aspect, and those are the decisions that it's going to force. CLG just have more tools now.
CLG's been doing so much damage with this Orianna when the spells actually connect. You've seen the kind of rapid burst he can do with just a basic spell combo landing onto somebody like Keen. With that Luden's Echo now done, that means that rapid fire burst is going to be even more effective. And speaking of rapid fires, Corky's going to be working on that cannon to be completed as his second item to make his burst that much scarier as well. Edge of Night also completed for both these junglers, so a lot of block potential for those critical spells, allow these guys to move a little bit more freely as they're looking to set up picks and set up plays.
Definitely going to help guard against the poke a little bit. Also maybe protect them from a death sentence. If they do get hit by a death sentence, they always have the Tom Kench who can eat them out of it. So trying to get that resiliency. The fear I have for Keen is, especially against AP mid laners, I often see Corkies go Hex Drinker or Maw second. He has no magic resist on that Corki, so
none at all. If
they are trying to stall out while Someday is pushing, they're not doing everything they can to avoid getting picked off, because that's ultimately the way they lose, is if CLG can force a 5v4 while Someday is off winning his 1v1, and then CLG steamrolls at home, and that could be just catching King with the Shockwave, he'd be instantly dead.
Afromu moving up very far forward into enemy territory, looking for that death sentence, but again, not going to be finding it. Chaser evolving those rockets second, like you mentioned, back when he was still level 7 or level 8. Very effective when your team's looking to poke, very effective at just sort of kind of keeping your enemies at bay.
Yeah, getting the slow on that spell is super important, so that also helps you disengage. CLG, I wonder if they're just trying to land enough poke before they can go for Baron, because they can threaten Baron quite realistically. Or do they just go for Someday? That could be where they're fainting next.
It's the Dignitas plan of action, right? Someday, 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 someday. So CLG is saying, we just got to shut this guy down. Just get him out of the picture.
Yeah.
Always keep an eye on that.
And it's interesting, because it's not just because they have Someday, it's because they have Someday on Fiora. There's certain top laners that really speak to a specific playstyle that you need to be able to execute, and Fiora is one of those where it's so much better in split push and 1v1 situations, and has that scaling component that he will be able to kill. Someday will be able to kill anyone once he gets to 5 or 6 items very quickly. Changes the way you have to play.
The percent HP true damage on those vitals means no matter how tanky Darshan gets, he's always going to be losing massive chunks of that health bar as Someday acquires more and more attack damage in this split push. He's currently up over 50 CS compared to his opponent in Darshan. So that economy advantage is only going to continue to grow as Darshan stays bottom to try to stop Someday as good as he can. Smithy, though, looking for Lod.
A lot of damage.
Going to be boosted up, speed boosted by that Hoo-Hee ball. Lod gets himself away, but he's got to spin the flash doing it.
Yeah, Graves jumps on you and gets you with Challenging Smite. You better run if you're Lod.
Piercing arrow over the wall to find Tom Kench. Package delivery backwards to safety for Keen. Doesn't want anything to do with Aframu's collapse potential. Yeah. CLG has found themselves an opportunity to take control over the entire Baron area. They are going to be spotted out by this ward here in the river, and the call is Baron.
Yeah, that sets them up. They burn the flash on Lod. They feel like they've gotten rid of the wards, but they haven't swept everything, so at least they're burning Sunday's TP. This will mean they pull off.
Someday coming in, Deadly Flourish finding its way onto Xmithy, piercing arrow fired out defensively, and CLG are off the objective. Dignitas manages to get there in time, and a slightly unthorough approach to taking Baron is thwarted by Dignitas.
Yeah, they were rolling the dice there that Team Dignitas was going to be too afraid of the face check, but they're not afraid of the face check because they had a ward and they knew they were doing Baron, so they weren't worried about the peel. And even that, Darshan had to burn TP to get in position, so it's not even really a summoner spell win. It's just a turret for Team Dignitas. Team Dignitas get a jab in at Baron.
Dignitas still with about a 2,500 gold deficit compared to CLG. The gold difference has been around this value for a lot of the game, but remember, as the game goes on further and further and further towards that late game, a small gold lead like 2,500 means less than it did back at 12 minutes. And here at 28 minutes, it's going to mean less than it will, or it means more than it will if we get to 45 minutes.
Agreed. The later it goes, the less it means as far as raw gold differences. You have to pay attention to the percentage gold difference, but Bloodthirster almost being completed onto Someday. And the only time I've seen a Maokai this year be able to really deal with the Fiora was actually a game over in Korea where Huni was on Maokai, and he was ahead of the Fiora in gold, and he also built Thornmail third item before the Fiora had picked up the second lifesteal item. That's definitely not going to happen this game.
No.
We already have a second lifesteal item in Someday with the Vamp Scepter on top of the Ravenous Hydra, and it looks like Darshan is either going for, the Frozen Heart or Randuin's Omen. So not going to be able to return that damage, and Someday's going to continue to win that 1v1. It's just a matter of how slow does Darshan make it.
CLG looking to make some plays yet again, this time onto Lod, who is still flashless. Aframu wants to find it if he can. Flash into the Chain of Corruption. Lod's going to be caught out and bursted down. CLG, they find their man, and now what is the call? They're here in mid lane. They've got the wave.
Oh, they go. They try to go for sure. They don't have the Maokai here to tank for them, which slows their ability to push a little bit. But even with this kill onto Lod, if they can get Someday to go back in base, which they have, they should be going right back to Baron to clear the vision and pressure Team Dignitas in that space.
Got to make something out of this. Lod still dead for another 15 seconds. Aframu clearing out those wards, moving towards the Baron pit. Gonna go ahead and drop that control ward, take out the last couple of remnants of Dignitas vision hanging around the area, and they make the call to start it up again. Is the second time gonna be the charm? Dignitas wants to say no. They're hanging around and they're ready to go.
It's at 5,000 health. Team Dignitas wants to go.
Dig needs to make their move. It's down to 4K. Gonna be dropping down to 3.5. CLG trying to do this as cleanly as they can. Darshan over the wall, looking to shut down Chaser so he can't steal it away. Red team has secured Baron Nashor. CLG is able to grab it. Stixie is gonna be bursted low. Xmithy first. Someday's in the pit just cutting these guys to pieces. You got Baron, but what's the cause? Dignitas, 5 for 0.
Woo, and a triple kill coming in for Someday. The cost, Clayton, is massive for CLG right there. They don't necessarily have the team comp that can kill Baron super quickly, and they got caught halfway through a fight while they were still debuffed from Baron, and they got destroyed in that pit because Lod even made it for the very tail end of that fight, and Team Dignitas is probably going to take that inhibitor.
Dignitas feeling good after that one. CLG sloppily go for the Baron. They end up securing it, lose all 5 members and the mid lane inhibitor in what was a game that was seemingly without great momentum for a while. The pendulum has swung for Dignitas.
Yeah, and even though CLG had the Mountain Drake, they just couldn't kill this fast enough. Just watch how much poke CLG take for being in this pit. Xmithy flashes over the wall here, but like everyone is incredibly low by the time Someday comes in. The curtain call is just in range for the back of the Baron pit, so Lod is able to contribute. And since CLG had flashed over the wall previously for the Kazakhs, they didn't have any CC left for when Someday's Fiora came in, who was the scary person in that team fight. Now he's really fed.
He didn't even come in alone. He had a whole artillery barrage behind him with those Jin bullets coming down from the curtain call. Just a great setup for Dignitas. But now they're still on their back foot as CLG's pushing up into their territory. No Baron buff available for anybody. You take the Baron, you get aced, all of a sudden the buff doesn't exist any longer. One thing also worth pointing out is that once that next Drake spawns, it is going to be an Elder Drake. So 2 big buffs with the potential to be on the table around the same time here in the near future.
Very true, and I expect somebody to keep split pushing to set up these situations. Well, what was interesting is, as Someday jumped in, you had the artillery behind him. It's pretty much just like he said, cover me, because missiles and bullets were flying in to
Suppressing
keep the other
fire,
team
yeah.
at bay, and it worked perfectly.
Someday sitting on 7-1 and 2. Bloodthirster completed as third item, working on a little bit of a defensive option now with the Spectre's Cowl, probably going for that Spirit Visage to provide even more amplification towards the lifesteal he already has, give him some of that valuable cooldown reduction, as well as just make it so he sort of laughs off the damage that Darshan would try to do to him. It's a complete non-factor, Darshan's damage, now that Someday's got a little bit of defense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's sitting at 111 magic resistance and massive amounts of lifesteal. CLG really have to become a little bit even more desperate now. They either have to completely pile to kill Someday, which they may or may not be able to do without him taking one with him, or they have to just rush at Team Dignitas and hope to get the engage, but Team Dignitas knows this too, so they're hopefully playing very far back, and it's all about wave clear here for Team Dignitas, which is why CLG wanted the Baron, because then they would be able to force this, but they don't have the Baron minions, so the wave can get cleared.
Curtain Call opens up, but Darshan's going to be soaking those first couple of shots. Redemption used to keep CLG healthy.
Yep, who needs minions? They're just going to go.
Bottom lane inhibitor turret is done, but it's going to be Someday answering this push in the top part of the map. Keen bound up by the Chains of Corruption. More damage coming in. Collateral damage will find its way back there as well. Keen still alive. Lod going to be forced to retreat yet again. Xpecial going to be jumped on. CLG might be looking to make some kind of a game ender here. Redemption comes in, but it will not be in time. CLG, they find the inhibitor, but they're going to lose their own. No way Dignitas allows them to back in time to stop Someday. 1-for-1 inhibitor trade. Yeah, they got the kill on Xpecial, but Someday is feeling good up there.
And here's the struggle. Someday would end the game. It's waves of super minions. So CLG trying to end it on their own net, but they can't catch Keen. Now they have to run.
Now who he's caught out. Now he's almost taken down. Keen looking for maybe one more rocket if he can find it. No flash available. Darshan looking to make the TP to get back in time to stop this. Xmithy is already there. CLG still running. Chaser in hot pursuit. Deadly Flourish finding its way onto Stixay, but there's no root attached. Chaser popping the ultimate, still looking to catch up to these guys. Someday's coming in for the punch. The pinch, I should say. Might be a punch along with it, depending on the damage he hits for. Darshan will be blocking him, just trying to control him for now. Dignitas not able to successfully route these guys, catch them out, and punish them, but they do force them away, and they enjoy a 2-to-1 inhibitor advantage.
Oh boy, yep. The 2-for-1 inhibitor advantage is a win for Team Dignitas, and these are the very tense moments that will ultimately decide the game. Probably not the big climactic 5v5 team fights. It's all about who can get the pick or who can win their side of the map faster. CLG, if they could have gotten Keen with the Shockwave, if he hadn't have flashed away, then yes, maybe CLG could have powered through, because they still have the Maokai who can tank things up, but they need to buy themselves time, and they have such a smaller margin of time to work with now that they're down 2 inhibitors against that Fiora.
The nature of this game has just been so tense the entire time because of the drastic difference between the game plans, of the timer that's essentially been put on CLG. Because if they wait and that thing strikes midnight, Someday just takes the Nexus on its own. They have to work so hard against this, trying to stop this Fiora push, but with 5 items now, all he needs is one more, and he's going to be full build. Nothing's going to be stopping this guy anytime soon. CLG are going to need to do something decisive very soon.
Yeah, they're definitely trying as well. For now, they need to make sure those super minion waves are pushed out as far as possible, and then they would want to get a foothold in the rest of the game. And this is what tests Team Dignitas' teamwork and CLG's teamwork. CLG is usually so good at moving around the map, but Someday has been able to pull out these games and will Team Dignitas to victory when they've been picking Fiora. And we said it during Champ Select, Clayton, when CLG locked in Maokai early, we're like, ooh, people don't do that against Team Dignitas because of Fiora immediately going, and they opted into this. It's been a close one.
CLG hanging around here in the mid lane. They've got the top side shoved out a little bit. Mid lane inhibitor has respawned, so some of that pressure is going to be alleviated from this squad. Someday looking to reapply that pressure right back into the bottom side, though. The only lane left with a guarded inhibitor in terms of turrets being between Someday and it. Dignitas looking to remedy that situation as soon as they possibly can. Chaser's going to be finding Xmithy here in the jungle. The Graves ult doesn't find anybody. Not what Xmithy was going for.
He was open for a one-shot, but he missed his skill shots. And Chaser also had a chain vest, so that really diminishes the effectiveness of lethality, since lethality is all about getting people really close to 0 armor, and as soon as you build something like the chain vest, you provide yourself a massive amount of defense.
Elder Drake is now live along with Baron Nashor. That situation we mentioned earlier where you have the 2 big buffs both running at once is now a reality. Keen's got the package, might be able to make some kind of a delivery here, but so far this game they've been nothing but whiffs.
Yeah.
Pretty much always used defensively or completely not at all.
Exactly, because Team Dignitas doesn't have to engage a open field fight. They only need to be able to throw poke in when CLG is doing an objective, or catch CLG while they're running back and forth trying to deal with Someday. So don't expect him to package aggressively unless it's into a Baron or Elder Drake pit.
Aframu almost got a death sentence onto Lod there, but the Ghost Blade was popped in time to allow Lod to have the extra movement speed to get himself out of danger. Someday still working on that bottom lane tier 2. It's not going to take too much more work at this point in time. Brings the Dig turret advantage up to 8 versus 7 on the side of CLG.
Yeah, and the timing actually doesn't work very well for CLG right now. If Darshan leaves those minions at the turret, it probably kills a Nexus turret. Meanwhile, CLG would want to be doing Baron, but Darshan also has to defend this, so they're going to be losing something unless they pull off a miracle.
Too much work for a single tree to have to deal with. Someday you can see when he procs those vitals, just the chunk out of Darshan's health bar it takes. Very difficult to do anything to this guy without a turret watching over you. As Dignitas sees their opportunity from all this pressure, they move into the Baron area, start clearing out some of these CLG wards, continually kiting back, utilizing the poke, and CLG has no answer for this, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to this point and COD hasn't had the waves prepped, it's really, really hard to play against a talented fed Fiora like this, and Someday's mastering it right now. Even now, Darshan wants to be able to save this, and I'm a little surprised actually that Someday is going back. It's because the rest of his team pulled, and it may actually buy the time for CLG to get control of the situation.
Inhibitor slowly being whittled down by these minions, but fortunately for CLG, a lot of those minions were already on the Nexus turrets, which then became invulnerable. So they just sort of stood there and got themselves killed instead of really contributing to anything constructive.
Yeah, that was really well played by Darshan to keep everything alive when it looked like a nearly impossible situation, but it started because Team Dignitas decided to go back and chop instead of keeping that overall map pressure left. Someday did buy a straight-up Guardian Angel. Chaser completed his as well, so they're kind of prepping for the next setup, but they had 90% of the pressure already built up, and now they have to rebuild it. Oh, or to just jump over the wall.
Someday's just deciding to go for the base. He doesn't care. Forget minions, let's just go back door. Aframu looking to make some kind of a play, but Xpecial gonna be keeping himself nice and safe.
Yeah, QSS on the Tom Kench to make sure they can't get picked, because that's all they have to worry about while
They're just
Someday
buying
works
time.
on these inhibs.
Buying time for Someday, who takes down the mid lane inhibitor by himself. Still has the potential top lane inhibitor he could go for. Bottom lane inhibitor still protected by a turret. Darshan making his way back into the base to stop Someday. Can't fight him for very long away from one of those turrets like we mentioned a couple of moments ago. Still only 2,000 gold separating these teams 40 minutes in, so pretty much an even fight 5v5, but 5v5 isn't really the name of this game.
I wonder what COD is going to do, because they need Darshan with them if they want to kill a turret in the mid lane, or they have to go in with all of their squishy targets at Baron and risk getting poked out. So they're between a hard place and Someday, so they're in a lot of trouble.
Pretty bad spot to be. Curtain call opened up. Huhi and Aframu having to retreat. TP gonna be channeled. Darshan looking to stop him. Aframu so low. Still kept alive. Someday coming in from the flank just in case the fight would have broken out completely. Pings coming out from Dignitas into the enemy base towards that top lane inhibitor that's completely exposed. They know Someday can go for it as long as they hold the rest of CLG here. Dig almost going to be taking some annoying damage onto their support, but it is Tom Kench, so he'll regenerate a lot of that pretty rapidly. As Someday does decide to go right back into the enemy base, he'll lunge over the wall and go for inhibitor number 2.
Yeah, and CLG has no teleport, so they have no other options. They have to go for Baron right now, and it's on Team Dignitas to stop them. Will Someday teleport in, and does CLG get aced once again?
This is the call. Baron at 3,000 HP. CLG needs to take it. They need to take it fast and clean. Chaser over the wall, just going to be interrupting backs, firing off the rockets. CLG got the Baron, and this time they got it alive.
That could have been a lot worse for
Way
CLG,
worse.
but now can they run down Someday? That's what they need.
And they grab him, flash away. Someday keeping himself alive for now. Huhi in hot pursuit. Xmithy looking to go even further. Deadly Flourish coming out. Huhi's going to be in some trouble. Shockwave finds no one. Chain of Corruption on to Keen, who's going to be locked down, but Stixay is now the one who's going to be jumped on. Huhi's dead first. Redemption in the backlines. Chaser's got GA. Darshan wasting so much time from the rest of Dignitas. Chaser getting himself back. Darshan's GA is popped. Gets himself away to safety with the power of the Lantern, and somehow that's just a 1 for 0. Huhi dies, Guardian Angels get blown all over the place, and Dignitas turns towards the Elder Drake.
So many forced plays right there. COD really felt like they needed to kill Someday, so they go all out for it. Huhi doesn't get the right shockwave, ends up taking a whole bunch of poke. They do not finish off Keen. Elder Drake goes over to Team Dignitas, but they will have time to put up another defense. Watch Someday here, just doing everything he can to stay alive. Riposte right there, what is the killing blow, and then Huhi just takes so much damage from Keen that he has to flash away, and then just over the back of the fight, watch Chaser, flash jump, kills Huhi while Someday is up from Guardian Angel. And if Someday had more mana, I think Team Dignitas would have continued this chase, but Keen and Chaser were very low, and they knew Elder Drake was an acceptable reward here, so they back away with only killing Huhi.
Every single Guardian Angel that was up got popped.
No longer up. That's why you get it.
Fiora, Kha'Zix, Maokai, all losing Guardian Angels in that previous fight. Would have been a lot bloodier without those purchases being there to begin with. 1,500 gold separates the two teams. Dignitas with an Elder Drake buff. They've got 2 Elemental Drakes under their belts, which means it's going to be a 135 true damage burn. CLG just kind of wants to wait this one out if they can.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate strategically for CLG here, because when they have the Baron, that's the time they want to be able to group up as 5 and push off Team Dignitas, but you do not want to do that against a team with Elder Drake, who has it for the next 2.5 minutes. So by the time the Elder Drake is expired by Team Dignitas, which is another minute, they need to prep another split push threat. Otherwise, CLG is going to be able to group up and brute force something down with the Baron buff. Since Baron lasts longer than Elder Drake, that is the inherent trade-off. Elder Drake is stronger in 5v5 combat, but Baron lasts longer. So Team Dignitas needs to go for wave manipulation right now so they can take the choice away from CLG later.
Darshan doing what he can to send that top wave on its way, despite the fact that super minions are pouring in. Keen setting up shop in bottom side. Remember, they've still got that 1 inhibitor turret left to deal with, as opposed to the other lanes, which are wide open should those inhibitors respawn anytime soon. Dignitas into the enemy jungle yet again. They found a free blue buff for themselves. Going to be passing that one off to Keen to ensure more rocket spam as this push continues. Elder Drake about to wear off. Only a couple of more seconds left to go on this one, and that's going to be CLG's potential green light to maybe make something happen.
No, if CLG sees the Elder Drake go off, as long as the super minions aren't full-time harassing their Nexus turrets, you'd want them to go for 5v5 initiation. What would happen elsewise, though, would Someday still has a teleport up, so if super minions ever get close to the Nexus turrets, he can just bail out of the fight and go for it. A lot of tension here, and so much of these games have to be pre-planned, because this is just the way the Fiora split push game works.
Stixay clearing out the waves while Afromu provides any sort of an escape mechanism he can for these guys. We're approaching the full build point for pretty much everybody in the game. 80 carries starting to hit it. Mid laner's getting very close to hitting it. Someday hit it a long time ago. Darshan does finally get that Thornmail up and going, but considering the Fiora now has 2 different lifesteal items and a Spirit Visage, it's not going to do too much.
Exactly. It will definitely slow the harass, though, and Someday, you know, might actually be a little low after killing Darshan. But you can see, not too much. Plus, he's pretty mobile. Can they close him down?
CLG Someday again. Very nice death sentence. Someday surely going to be brought down. Credit goes over to Stixay. And for the first time in a long time, CLG can breathe a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's huge. It allows them to potentially either push mid or just get all of their waves pushed out right now. 50 seconds, and they're already at the halfway point in this lane. Plus, they can bring Darshan into tank. This could be 2 inhibitors for CLG, actually.
CLG recognizing that Someday still has a 35-second death timer. They've got 1 inhibitor exposed in the bottom lane. Mid lane still got that turret, but they've got everybody here.
Yeah, pay attention to the poke. Darshan has flash. He's going to want to use that to initiate. But there's also a QSS Tom Kench and a lot of things that Team Dignitas can use to disengage. They're not going to risk it.
Darshan is a full build Maokai with multiple armor items, does not concern himself even a little bit with the damage from the turret, just walks up, tanks it up. CLG finds inhibitor number 1 and inhibitor number 2 right thereafter, and the tables have turned. Dignitas now the ones facing pressure. But the curtain call opens up, trying to find those valuable members. Xmithy avoiding the 4th shot.
This is the risk, though. Someday's alive, teleporting in, trying to get 2 inhibitors back, and Team Dignitas is trying to interrupt the recalls.
Dig has to stop these backs right now. CLG needs to get somebody back into the base to defend this. The Shockwave's not going to be finding anyone. Darshan makes the TP, gets himself out of dodge in time. Chaser's going to be losing that Guardian Angel yet again. Burst from Xmithy is there. Red turret destroyed. You see the message in the middle of your screen. Someday still working on that base.
But they can no longer interrupt the recalls, so it is a 2 inhibitor for 1 trade by Team Dignitas, and slowly but surely, this game's going towards its conclusion.
Eventually, maybe, we'll see the end of this game, but 47 minutes in, when you trade 2 inhibitors for an inhibitor and a Nexus turret, these teams are just going blow for blow for blow. And the fact that they're just not able to get any advantage over each other shows how close of a match this truly is. Baron will be live for the 3rd time in 25 seconds.
Yeah, and ultimately, when you're playing these 1-4 split push compositions, their margin of error is so slim from both sides. So when a team has an advantage, like Team Dignitas had for the last 15 or 20 minutes, if Someday gets picked off, you just lose that advantage right away. And they can play it strategically to a point where CLG doesn't necessarily have the answers, but if he gets picked off like that, you see it. Now CLG has the edge. With Baron being back up as well as 2 inhibitors being down for Team Dignitas, they're now the ones in a tight spot.
CLG seeing if they might be able to end the game where Dignitas was not able to. Dig will always have to continue answering those minions flowing in on the other end of the map. Chaser kiting back, utilizing the power of the rocket. Stixay's going to be eating a lot of damage. Curtain call comes out. Mini shields onto Stixay, keeping him in a good enough spot. Redemption used, CLG grabbing some heals from that. Aframu taken down to about 1/3. Someday marching towards the enemy base as Dignitas scares away CLG long enough to move themselves towards Baron just a little bit. Keen with package ready if Dignitas finds a chance to maybe take this fight. Darshan going in on top of Xpecial. This might be our start. Darshan still tanking Chain of Corruption, not finding anyone. Pretty big spell to not have. Dignitas sees their green light.
Yeah, this is risky because it is a 5v5 fight against a team who wants it.
And there's minions in the Dignitas base. Who he's going to be forced back. Redemption coming down. Darshan's the target. Piercing arrow coming out. Someday going to be bursted low. Guardian Angel pop. Dignitas in a real bad spot. Someday now getting himself killed. The lone member dead in this fight. The Nexus turrets, the 2nd one, will likely fall here to these minions. 1 hit away from that big super minion pulling it down. It falls. Open base. Open Nexus for Dignitas. It's a 5 versus 4.
Meanwhile, minions are actually killing CLG's base as well. The 2nd Nexus turret just fell, so CLG kind of have to push in and win right here. If they get poked too much, they would end up losing.
CLG just needs to find the win, go for the Nexus, force this down. Xpecial's gonna be the target. Deadly Flourish coming out. Stixay exhausted. Chaser gonna be forced to jump out. Xmithy is dead, so is Xpecial. Lod gonna be hit. Piercing arrow. Ladies and gentlemen, CLG, game 1.
Woo! That was a barn burner right there. 2 Nexus turret deads on the side of CLG while they kill the Team Dignitas Nexus. Only 1,000 gold apart from these teams. 10 turrets dead on each side, 14 kills on each side, 2 Drakes on each side. That game was so close, Clayton. But ultimately, CLG walks away the victor.
CLG, man, you got to be sweating for these guys because they had to deal with that Fiora pressure for so long. Just a situation that you feel like there's no way out. It's just slowly constricting the life out of you. And then they alleviate that pressure. They find the pick onto Someday. They get themselves back into the game.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you think about it totally from a mental perspective, that was CLG thinking they could just out-coordinate the Team Dignitas side because you're putting their best player on the champion that is most capable of carrying a game by himself, and they still couldn't do it. So that was almost the gauntlet being thrown down by CLG, and it nearly backfired. Like, it probably should have backfired because Someday got way too fed. At one point, he was 7-1 in that game. but Team Dignitas just couldn't do it. They couldn't quite get the right plays down the stretch.
And we talked about when this season first started, CLG returning the entire roster, this team that's worked together, the importance of the synergy and having the ability to work together as a coherent unit is what wins games like that.
Cool as a cucumber right there.
Cool
They just stayed
as a
steady
cucumber.
throughout the end of that game and closed it out.
For a deeper look into exactly how they did it, what they did, and how it went down, let's check in with the analysts.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. Now, this is a game that we did not expect to go in CLG's favor, given the way that the earlier portions of the game and how far ahead
a roller coaster.
someday
it looked good.
Someday got on that Fiora.
Yeah, so obviously we've been talking a lot about how Dig looks their best when Someday's on a carry champion. He's able to get one this time into a favorable matchup into the Maokai. And initially he's kind of crushing lane. It's looking pretty good. And then I actually liked what CLG did a lot, where they started opening up the map and they just kept swapping back and forth. And Dig was always a step behind.
Right, and Dignitas are very clear about their strategy with this, right? Chaser is up there right after he's level 3. He stays up there. He's just camping that top lane to the point where that's why CLG go with this lane swap. And even though CLG, they're going to lose tempo going for this lane swap, right? Now that you're the one being the reactive one, they are able to get some minion waves back for Darshan, and there's a very long chain of events where they actually are able to turn eventually something around in the mid lane, but it is a long chain that is worth tracking.
Right, and so before we get to kind of that point where Someday starts to take off on the Fiora and open the map up with the split pushing, let's look at some of those CLG moves that you're talking about. The positives that are going to come out of this game for them is that they still have some sense of macro game.
Right, it is very reminiscent to the old 2v1 style where you're moving around the map a lot, trading TP advantages and things like that. And that's how the early game really looked, was kind of that old open map style. And with that, CLG looked really great. They were pressured in the mid lane, they had deep vision control, and they were able to take the bot turret off a rotation, but then they overstay, take a lot of damage, and the initial engage by Afro was just a little whiff.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation where Dig's going to come out on top here with the fight, Kobe, but Fiora coming in very late with a TP here. No pressure in the top lane.
Yeah, I mean, so someday we're going to sing his praises a lot for a large portion of the split pushing that he did this game. However, we still see that there are some coordination issues with this team. If you are making the call to have your AD carry flash into 4 people, and maybe he's not being vocal about that, or whatever the case, it looked like the team was on the same page of chasing that down.
Right.
Someday was at where the outer turret was, so he would have to push through 2 more waves to be able to get to another objective to really make staying up there and split pushing worth it. And they did have that ward in a pretty good spot. If you're willing to flash forward with the rest of your teammates, maybe you make that pincer earlier on and you maybe come out with it with a death or 2 less.
Right, so we had seen this kind of this situation where CLG's playing the macro game fairly well, but Someday was still managing to pick up the kills. We saw that 7-1 scoreline at one point in the game with the triple life, or rather the double lifesteal item and the split push pressure that was able to set up. And yet Dignitas not able to close this game out. So let's kind of identify why it was that this comp fell apart, because we were saying Someday on the carries is Dig's best opportunity to win a match.
Still think it is.
Yeah, and that's totally okay, but why couldn't they close out here? What was the issue?
Well, there were a couple things. Once they finally started taking the top 2 inhibs off the back of Someday split push, there's 1 inhib left up, and they started kind of grouping around him, and then that stalled them out. And then once, instead of putting him top to guide the super creeps in versus a Maokai, and then pull pressure up, they sent him against the turret alone, and that's when CLG collapsed and they got that fight, where it actually didn't go that well, but they couldn't get the bot inhib turret again. And then it stalled out to the point where both teams had some inhibs down, and then they forced around Baron, which was a huge mistake by Dignitas. They're not the ones who should be forcing around Baron.
All right, let's take a look at a Baron fight here. 30 minutes in, CLG is going to get aced here at the Baron. This was a big blunder in forcing this one.
Right, this is kind of what allowed them back into the game, so we're taking a step back here, where CLG had all that great macro play, and then they forced this Baron really, really hard. They over-focus Chaser, trying to stop him from being able to take this Baron. Smithy goes over the wall, fails his ultimate to get back over, has to flash back over to secure the Baron, and now they're all trapped in the pit. And this is really when Someday took off, and you should say, okay, they should be able to kind of have this split push Fiora take over the game.
Right, that's a triple kill picked up there for the Fiora, and that was kind of the point where we're like, well, there's really no way that Dignitas should lose this game. You also notice in that fight, Huhi blowing his shockwave on the Baron only hit maybe 1 target. Multiple ultimates throughout the game in this victory didn't hit, or probably misused or not used optimally. He'll receive probably a bit of flack for that and some criticism. Lucky to get the victory, I think, in spite of all of that, and we'll see how much more polished established he might be here in Game 2. But for Dignitas, that's got to be disappointing to have been set up with, probably your best opportunity to win in having someday, a strong split pusher on the map and still come out with a loss here.
All right, it's one of those heart rate gold graphs where it's just someone's going up and down, and it really did look like towards that, post 35-minute mark when they started getting that gold lead, Dignitas looked in a really great position because it's someday on his signature champion. His stats on it are crazy, and you think he's going to win.
Oriana got out-damaged by Maokai.
So there were definitely some very big mistakes from both solo laners of CLG, and you mentioned the one that we had on camera. Yeah, that one looked great compared to the sombrero while flashing out.
Yeah.
So yeah, they definitely have some stuff to clean up, but they were able to grind out that win for game number 1, which bodes very well moving forward. Because I don't think that even though they were able to beat some days Fiora, I don't think that they want to give that type of strategy over to Dignitas again because.
Right.
If you force him onto something like the Poppy, it seems so much easier to be able to take him down.
Well, yeah, I mean, his win rates, when we were looking at some of both his career stats and his split stats, I mean, now moves to 12-4 on Fiora over his career, so just under an 80% win rate there. Maokai, this split 3-3, Poppy, 0-3 for Dignitas, so definitely a better opportunity to win when he's on this carry champions. The question is, will CLG allow that to happen this time around? For Dignitas, let's pretend they don't have the opportunity to play Fiora again. Do you think that they have what it takes to beat the CLG squad if they get relegated to a tank in the top lane? How do they have to adjust their play style?
So we have seen them win with non-Fiora someday. On the Maokai, they do have those 3 wins, and he has been a really good tank player as well. It's just that when you have him on a tank, then you definitely need Keen to step up, Law to step up, the rest of the damage dealers, right, who have had bright spots, but very uncertain, are they going to actually be able to finish out a game? Keen had that 9-0 Azir game when he was, and you can't end with a late game 9-0 Azir then.
Right. So if you're gonna toss your win condition in someday, you've got to bring up a win condition from one of your other 2 major characters.
Right, and I think Keen's the one to kind of look at. We've seen him on TF be able to do a lot of good things like that, and I think once you get off the main mid lane champ pool, he starts to look a lot better.
All right, CLG sneaks by with a victory here in Game 1 of the series. We're going to step away for a quick break, but when we come back, it's Game 2 between Team Dignitas and CounterLogic Gaming. Stay with us. You're watching the North American LCS. That's a lot of work.
The game is ending. Just stall. Poke. Cooking. SMS.
I got it.
I have shield. All right, push him out. Go.
Can go.
I got him right now. Go mid.
Yeah.
Poke the top wave. Just go. Hey, don't get picked up. Don't get picked up. Let's go.
I'm trying to heal up. I'm gonna heal up, guys.
Lantern. Nexus is open. Let's go.
Yeah.
We just got in the game.
All
Right. Hey, we have to do it right now.
Open too.
Yeah. We have to go right
I'll
now.
flash in on their carries. You guys in the game. Yeah.
Don't get
I'm
poked.
with shielded, Darshan.
Yeah. We need Darshan to go right now. Right now.
Darshan, anyone.
Yep.
Look for the end.
Yeah. I'm just gonna start hitting the Nexus.
Hey, go. Turn. Tom. Guys. Watch Gorky.
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 You guys have to go in.
No. All right, good job.
Nice.